Hello and welcome in to the Sport.Fun Strategy Show. I am Andrew Laird, joined as always by PSU fans too. Sean, I feel like this is, the conversation right now about Sport.Fun is how quiet it is. And after the last few weeks, it's like, oh, maybe that's okay. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, here's a question for you. Do you think a lot of it is tied into like the European way where soccer just continuously is going? And yeah, you do get to the back end of a season, which is less interesting, but like it's always going. Whereas like all American sports take like massive time off. Like all of them have at least 4 or 5 months off.
So I was saying to somebody earlier, this is the slowest period of the European calendar, which is weird because they're like leading up to the Champions League and final and all that stuff. But like realistically, the end of the season is always super boring. And NFL, like we're in the off season. I will say, I'll get into that in a second, but I think there's like a huge. I don't think you realize the difference until now when you're just like, man, there is really nothing going on in NFL for a while. And like, they're free agent signings and all this stuff, but it's just super slow. And I think because we only had a half season of NFL, and maybe I'm kind of misreading this, but it felt like every move, meaning guy had a good game, guy had a bad game, whatever it was, the market responded so quickly. And the football, like soccer side of it feels like a more long-term game. And so you don't see these like drastic spikes. I mean, you do see some when guys get injured and stuff like that, but it doesn't feel like it's quite as quickly reactive as NFL was.
Yeah, it definitely feels more reactive in the injury perspective because there is an injury cover. Like NFL, maybe. A lot of the time you would see someone get injured and then you would see a pretty quick rebound on price to some extent because people felt like it overreached where it should have went for like the injury cover that would be provided for the player.
For sure.
So for that perspective, yeah. But like, I mean, NFL, especially towards the end of the season, like people were incredibly active in regards to the playoffs. And I think that people overestimated what they were going to receive from the playoffs based on where things were going. Like, I feel like those players got super bloated, which, I mean, we even talked about, like, we talked about before the playoffs or like as the playoffs were going. And I'm like, there's just no way that these players should be this price, even from the perspective of like, you're going to get guaranteed rewards from them. But also at the same time, it's like these guys are so bloated in terms of like their actual abilities and talent on the field that they just shouldn't realistically be in this range, I don't think. And I think that played out towards the end of the season with the after season and what we saw like in the immediate aftermath of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things that we kept saying it, and yet we weren't going to, like, the example I always go back to is Shakir, where we were like, this dude is not worth this as long as they're not in the playoffs. And they kept, the Bills didn't end up going that far, but his price was just like, he is priced this way because he's playing.
Yep.
And I think we talked about it kind of on one of our first shows that the guys who were in the playoffs had the biggest downside risk because as soon as they were out, it's like they were done. And while they kept going, that meant more offseason TP that they could win. At that time, we thought we'd be able to accumulate more shares over the offseason and stuff like that. And so it just felt like those, like the NFL players were way more volatile than soccer, I'll call it. And I feel like because of that, there was not as much discussion there's just not as much discussion about the soccer side than there is NFL because it's like somebody has a bad game. It's like, all right, he's got plenty of games left. I feel more long-term about it. And NFL just feels so short-term that when NFL is not going on, everything kind of quiets down a little bit. And I will say this, like, so obviously things like blew up 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it's quiet now. And it feels like, I've seen a few people who were on the quieter side 2 weeks ago anyway, but they were still there that are buying NFL. Like I'm taking some of my football winnings and putting it into NFL and like going that way. And I looked yesterday, like just when I log in, and it shows you like their new off-season TP counter. And the thing that just jumped out at me, because I was like, oh, all right, people are starting to be like okay with things. And I look and it's 4 of 22 in terms of the 18% complete. And
Yeah.
well, like I think people were like, they hit the off-season lull very quickly, and they're just like, oh, there's nothing to do. We need Sims. We need all of this shit. And then all of a sudden that went away, and it felt like it went away because people are like, okay, we're getting there. We know this is going to happen. And then I saw that 18%, and I'm like, we are so far away from the NFL.
It's actually kind of wild because I think a lot of it is the crypto space, because the crypto space
absolutely
like you're moving rapidly, and that's just not how this is set up currently. Not saying that it can't change in the future, because I think one of the ideals behind things is, well, first of all, a lot of outright NFL fans don't like soccer. That's probably an overlap that like typically like NFL fans as a whole, I would say, don't like soccer more likely than others. And similarly, like people that are very into European soccer, that's a less likely group of people that will like the NFL compared to, let's say, hockey, where maybe they have teams that they root for, players they root for, or the NBA, which is more of a worldwide brand, stuff like that. So you had like 1 week after the Super Bowl, and everyone was like, where is all this stuff? And it's like, it's the off season. And now, could things have been done a little differently in terms of what we did? Yes. Let's talk about Sims real quick, because I know that was a hot topic, and you didn't invite me on any shows to go over Sims. So I think a lot of the want for Sims is just the want for something. And like, I do understand that. And so maybe in the future, that's some sort of consideration. But people are acting like Sims is the most appealing, interesting thing that realistically you can do. And I just don't think that's true at all. I think if we had Sims would just be an incredibly dull, mindless activity that like maybe a very few groups of people would enjoy. But also, like, I don't think you're going to be attracting a ton of new users via Sims. You might retain some users, but most likely those users are going to stay anyways. But also, like, let's say you run Sims. Let's hypothetically pick a world where Sims are being ran right now. The rewards from Sims have to come from somewhere. So do those rewards come from the off-season TP stuff? Now, obviously, we weren't going to change giving out the TP for the off-season. But so, like, if we put Sims in place before the off-season started and we decided half the off-season rewards go to Sims, or all the rewards go to Sims, let's just hypothetically say, well, then you don't get the rewards that you're getting for the off-season TP. You're just getting them for Sims. It's just a movement of the rewards that you're getting from one thing to another. And Sims, so a lot of the people that are begging for Sims, and you can correct me if you think I'm incorrect with this, a lot of people that are begging for Sims and really wanted Sims don't actually understand what that entails. They don't really understand what Sims are.
I don't know if they do or not.
So I actually talked to Jimmer about it from the perspective of Sims. Sims, we can't really just do a version of Sims where we just like pick a random score from the season type of stuff, because if we do something like that, hypothetically everybody can be like, oh, you influenced the decision. So it has to be something that is, one, interactive in some way, otherwise what's the point? And then two, has to be in a way in which we can't influence it all, because otherwise then people would be, oh, you're influencing it. So the best example that I'll give is the way that DraftKings used to do it, and that is with Madden simulations. So what they would do is they would play a game of Madden on whatever system it was, but nobody played. It was just two computers playing against each other, and they would have announcers. So you would have to have 16 of those over the course of a week if you were doing Sims over the course of the week, and then hypothetically have Andrew Laird broadcasting and announcing what's going on in these Sims. I just don't think that is as exciting of a process as what a lot of people think that they would be. And I think a lot of it is just from the perspective of people want something, and that I totally understand. But we were pretty clear going into the offseason of where there would sort of be some things around the season, and that would be with the draft, the preseason, some scouting things. And all of that is stuff we are planning on doing. They just aren't quite ready to launch. And I think those not being quite ready to launch at the time of the sort of the stuff that happened a couple weeks ago, I think that was kind of the causation for this. And then I think there was also some other things that happened with the time frame. But like, we'll talk about the time frame quickly. Like you said, we're on week 4 of 22. Well, the draft is week 8 of 22. So all of a sudden, like at week 1 or 1.5, we didn't have the draft stuff launched. But I think I also totally understand and agree with the complaints that the community had in terms of, oh, hey, we really want something. We want to see this stuff and all of this stuff. So it's one of those things where I think that it's not perfect in how it was done this season. And I think part of that is because it's a learning process, right? Like we are learning how to best provide and produce these things. So like we are learning as we go, but then obviously flip side of that, as we are learning as we go, sometimes there will be some things that are not implemented exactly in a way that works, and we have to then correct them. And I think that's where a lot of the issues came from a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I don't think the request for Sims had anything to do with Sims. I think it had everything to do with give us something to do.
Correct.
I think the problem is, and we feel fairly similarly about this, that Sims are awful.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest problem that I have with Sims is using Sims in a fantasy game that is supposed to be based on real life events, and now we're just basing them on things that are not, that didn't happen, that just two computers have decided. Maybe it's one computer. Like that's not the game anybody signed up for. And I think the argument is people want something to do. People want a degen. Let us play. We want our rewards. Like none of that leads to anybody signing up. B, it may actually push some people away who are really into fantasy. And you're like, hey, you want to play this new fantasy NFL game? And they're like, sure. And you're like, by the way, in the offseason, there's Sims. And they're just like, oh, I'm out. It's just a hard no for a lot of people. Now, do you want to push the degens away? Probably not. But I don't think you create a product for that group of people that ends up realistically alienating the hundreds of thousands and millions of people that you want on the platform eventually.
Well, because in theory, the degens would be there regardless, right? Like they are going to be interested in whatever you put out eventually regardless. Whereas the other users, like, yeah, if you're a user that's a fantasy player that comes in and be like, oh, you got to deal with 22 weeks of Sims, that's not something a lot of those people would be interested in.
It's like a hard no for those people.
Yeah.
Like I think we can try to like sugarcoat it a little bit. Like you and I have talked about a lot of people in the fantasy NFL industry that like, oh, would they like this game? And Sims immediately makes them walk away.
Yeah. And I will say, I do want to come back to this a little bit. I'm not trying to poo-poo on Sims as an idea per se, or the idea of like, we just want something happening, because I do understand and respect that. So I don't want to, I don't want to like poo-poo and be like, hey, you guys like wanted Sims. That's dumb. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying I think Sims are not a rewarding and fulfilling thing that would make sense for this platform. But I also acknowledge and understand that the user base as a whole wants something to do and wants something to like work with. And I think in the future, because the idea is obviously we have more sports. And I know some people don't like soccer. So if you don't like soccer and you're here for NFL, well, then you literally have 30 weeks of nothing where there's not anything going on. There's no football and you don't like soccer, so you're not interested in going to soccer.
Yep.
If we eventually have, let's say, just examples, NBA, MLB, like hypothetical examples. Well, all of a sudden that you probably might have more interest in NBA, and then all of a sudden you go from NFL, because this is what Americans do, right? Americans move from one season to the next. So like when NFL season is over, NFL fans, a lot of them move into hockey, move into basketball. Yeah. Then when that's over, they move into baseball. Then when that's over, they move back into NFL. Obviously, you have like golf that goes like year round. So like people like golf, they sort of have stuff. So Americans are different in that way, in that they have different opinions of the sports and like sort of how the calendar works. Like when NFL season's over, you don't really think about it for a couple weeks. Then it's like the draft. Okay, then you think about the draft, then that ends, and you don't really think about it, free agency. Then you don't really think about it, then the draft. And then you really don't think about it for like 2-3 months. And then all of a sudden you're like towards the beginning of the season and preseason. So, but anyways, yeah, I just wanted to backtrack because I'm not trying to discredit the idea that users want something to do during a more down time that this is. So I do think that that's something that we can look into going into future seasons of like, is there something more interactive that we can give, not just around the draft and the preseason? Like, is there something that works that would be interactive, that would be a good way to entertain people?
Quick shout out to Andy and Mike checking in on the live chat there. So one of the points, I think it was Gary who actually brought it up, and it's not about Sims, but he was saying that basically there are plenty of people who are doing like best ball drafts right now.
Yeah.
And those people are your real NFL like hardcores to be able to be comfortable enough drafting best ball teams in early March, end of February. And he was like, we should be targeting those people. This platform should be for those people. And I don't necessarily disagree. I don't think Sims bring those people here, but I kind of was asking you about it a couple weeks ago of basically there are all these different like fantasy football sites that do rankings and what kind of dynasty rankings, current season best ball. And I was like, what do you think are the most relevant for Sport.Fun? And you were like, I think it's best ball. And that's when, meaning like best ball rankings for the upcoming season are probably a better helper than dynasty rankings. And the more I thought of it, I was like, yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. And so and then Gary kind of brought up this whole, like, why aren't we going after these best ball degens? And so I know a bunch of people who play best ball pretty significantly. They're the people who have hundreds or thousands of entries on Underdog or DraftKings, whatever it is. And I was like, hey, like, what have you been doing for best ball lately? And they're like, I don't do best ball now. It's crazy to do it now. I'm not going to waste my money doing it now. I'll do like my thousands of drafts in July and August. Like that's when I'll do them. And I mean, these are people who spend tens of thousands of dollars on NFL best ball. And I was just like, if they're not looking at it now, the number of people that like, it's almost like not a worthwhile group to go after the people who are playing now in the fact that you have to essentially build a product for those scattered people. Not to say that those people aren't spending a ton of money. And if you're spending lots of money in March, you're probably spending a lot of money in July and August also. But I'm just not sure that the early best ball people cross over enough that you need to make a product for the off season to have them come on.
Well, to be fair, it is a group that is interesting. The issue with it is like the current product of what Sport.Fun is nowhere near the realm of what the product that best ball is. Like it's not even in the same like hemisphere. They're just completely different products. Now, that's not to say that in the future maybe we don't do something that is more best ball related, because I actually did think about it. But like the issue is with best ball, you got to understand it's gambling. It's described as that, I believe. So you have to have completely different legalities than what the current infrastructure is with Sport.Fun. And it is a completely and utterly different product. Not to mention, you're talking the Underdog best ball, like they just laid off, I think, 125 employees. Sport.Fun doesn't have 125 employees, much less the ability to lay off 125 because it's such a massive platform that has like I'm pretty sure it's worth like $6 billion or something, or maybe it's even more. It might even be worth like 10 to it got valued at some obnoxious amount. But to do a best ball product, you have to have a completely different setup than what we currently have. That's not something that just pops up in a day. That's something that like it's going to take a good year to 2 years to build out, think about. And then, like I said, that doesn't even include the legalities and the different stuff that surrounds that to make it work. So I think that it's a completely different thing. And that goes into the whole discussion too that we're sort of talking about is like, we have a lot of stuff that's being worked on. And I think there was a misconception that stuff wasn't being worked on by a lot of the community. There is constantly stuff being worked on and implemented and tested. The issue is like, you can't really release something until it's tested and ready to roll. And sometimes testing of it takes a week or two to go through all the ins and outs of whatever the thing is. So there's a lot being worked on. There's a lot of different products and aspects that are getting touched on, and you obviously bounce back and forth between certain things based on what a priority is at that given time. But the team is constantly working on different things, different improvements to the site, improvements to the gameplay, improvements to the market. But all these things take time and take testing, because we've seen what happens with some stuff that gets released and maybe isn't exactly what we want. It causes a quick retraction effectively and a quick fix to it, and then that just looks not great all around. So I think there's a balance between trying to do things really rapidly and then also doing things in a time frame in which they work and are functional when they are released, so that everyone is happy with the performance of them.
Yeah, I don't think the argument was that they wanted like a best ball product in Sport.Fun. It was just more, if people are nuts enough to be drafting best ball teams in March, they would probably be nuts enough to buy player shares of in the off season of these types of a fairly similar game. I mean, literally the way that that tournaments work on Sport.Fun feels like best ball. Oh, you own shares. He has the best week, you win. And so I think the crossover makes a ton of sense, but I'm not sure how you market to those people in a game that has existed for effectively 10 NFL weeks.
Correct.
And expect them to dump a shitload of money onto the site to buy now, to hold it forever. I mean, I guess you could make the argument best ball drafts is that you're spending money now to possibly win in December.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like, I think it's absolutely a market segment that they should go after.
Oh, for sure.
But I'm not sure building a product. I'm not even sure there is a product you can build. I certainly don't think Sims get them to come in now.
Correct.
And so I think it's just, it's the tough situation of the first NFL offseason with soccer as the only other sport. And it's just, yeah. Like I feel like everybody keeps being like, this is really boring. This sucks. And the response from the team is like, this is going to be the most boring offseason ever. Like every single one after this will be better. And everyone's like, that's fine, but it still kind of sucks. But like, while not appreciating that there should be other things to do next year.
Correct. Yeah, it's a completely different product. Like you said, I mean, we're talking about a 22-week off season. Well, 22 weeks ago, the NFL product didn't even exist.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's one of those things that figuring out all the kinks with stuff is something that takes a little bit of time and figuring out of how exactly you want to do things. But yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think you want to attract that group, but is this the exact time in which that group is likely to come on? No, probably not. It's probably going to be closer to the season this year. And then maybe in the future seasons, it's more of an off season type of play for them. So it's one of those things. And I have nothing to do with marketing per se, because that is definitely not my expertise. Like my expertise is very clearly on like NFL gameplay and fantasy designs. That's like where my expertise is. So I don't like to comment on marketing stuff. But I also know is like I remember seeing some stuff on marketing. It's like marketing doesn't just like pop immediately. A lot of the time it takes planning and figuring out exactly what your approach is and what you're going for. But yeah, I think long term you do want those users. That's definitely a subset that you want to attract in the future.
Yeah.
I think the tricky thing about the platform is, and you kind of mentioned it before about how crypto moves so fast that, and even just, so crypto moves really fast. It's amazing how much it's affected by sentiment, that if people are happy, they'll buy. And if they feel like they're getting upset or they see other people upset, they'll sell. And like most traditional fantasy platforms move so slowly,
Yes.
like breathtakingly slow. And one of the tricky things that they have to deal with is like traditional fantasy football play, like NFL players. And I'll even add like fantasy baseball if we get there. It's really hard to get people to change platforms. Like I have friends who have played fantasy NFL on like Yahoo for 30 years. And if I would be like, hey, try this other one, they're like, no, I'm not going to do that. And it's just like, it's really hard to convert people over, even though these platforms barely change over the last 2 to 3 decades.
Oh, yeah.
And Sport.Fun is just, the expectation is that they have to move so quickly, but they're literally trying to compete against platforms that barely move.
Oh yeah, like I mean, the DraftKings, like FanDuel, Underdog. Okay, Underdog hasn't changed their UI in like years,
and they're like a fairly new platform.
Yeah, it's brutal. So they have a current bug. This is like, they have a bug right now that doesn't give you a notification when you're on the clock in a draft. So the whole idea is like, you have to be looking at your screen to know you're up in a draft, because there's no notification. It's broken. It's been broken for at least a month. And I've talked to them multiple times and they have not fixed it. It's actually gotten worse because the bug was there, but it like gave you an alert when the draft started. So you usually like could be working on something and then the draft started, and the draft now doesn't even do that. So there's literally like no notifications. So as you're drafting, if you aren't paying attention, you're just going to miss shit, because like if you like zone out, because I typically would draft stuff and I'll be sitting here working on this. So like I have 3 monitors, right? So like I'm over here looking at this monitor and my drafts are over here on this monitor. So I'm not looking at it. So all of a sudden, like when I get notifications, I'm like, all right, let me go look over here. I don't even get them. So all of a sudden, if I'm like zoned into something, I just don't even see it. And I'm just like, oh, well, missed 3 picks. That's a mistake. and some of the, like, so I'm doing college basketball stuff right now. So like college basketball for the tournament, if you fuck up, you're just dead.
Yeah, you're dead.
Like you're dead. So like I'll be sitting there and there's just no notifications, and I like realize I missed 3 picks. I'm like, shit. I'm like, that's not great.
It's a tough spot to be in for Sport.Fun, just in terms of, like we said, the off season is really slow. And it's an interesting point that you made before that I hadn't really thought about, that there's really very little crossover between NFL and soccer fans. Like I would even argue that a lot of NFL fans are anti-soccer, because
a lot of the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there really shouldn't have been any expectation that people would be like, oh yeah, I'll just like move over, because the World Cup's, and maybe the World Cup gets a few of them, but it's not like they're going to get them and have them stay on that side. As soon as NFL comes back, it's like, okay, all my money's going back to NFL. And I don't think that's necessarily a problem. It is something as a user we need to figure out, because if you're heavy on one and then it gets bumped up because people happen to be interested at that time, and then it comes back to, like, I think we'll see more swings like that just from sport to sport. Whereas if you look at like the total market cap of the site, maybe it's not changing that much. But if you only play one thing, you're going to feel that a little more than the others.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that obviously the more stuff you get and the more stuff that's implemented, that isn't necessarily going to be the case, because most people have interest in other stuff. It just may not be soccer, or it may not be NFL. Like I know a lot of soccer people are not going to be interested in the NFL. So right. It's one of those things where I think that the more stuff you give people, the more interest they're going to have naturally over the course of the year, which then leads to less downtime and less of spots where there isn't much going on. Because in theory, like let's say you have baseball, basketball, there's something that at all times during the year that people realistically have the option to get involved with. Because I think the idea is the whole platform as a whole, right? It's not just it's not like the sport is on an island by itself, never to be touched with anything else. Like, yeah, the rewards are given in NFL via NFL, but like it takes 2 clicks to go sell a reward from NFL, move it into soccer, or vice versa. So I think the idea is like, I think a lot of the boringness this year is because there just aren't other sports available for users to go into. So it just leaves you with a giant lull where if you're not into soccer, you're just not interested in much.
Do you think, and maybe it's inappropriate to ask you since you have, a little more behind the curtain, but do you think that the sport expansion will be a lot faster in the future? Like when they add NBA, do you think this time next year we have 3 sports, or could we have like 7?
I don't know how realistic it is to have a bunch. That said, I also do think it is easier to expand to new sports because it was kind of done for soccer into NFL, and I think that process was done relatively quickly and smoothly. And I think there's enough that you can carry over from sport to sport that it makes the transition relatively simple from a design perspective, because a lot of the issues like going to be on the design front and the dev work, whereas I think there's a good chunk that you can carry into stuff. Like soccer isn't going to be the same as NFL, NBA wouldn't be the same as NFL, all of that, but I think there's at least some infrastructure that is set in place that makes the transitions easier. Now that said, like I don't think you're going to see a new sport every like 3 days, but I think it is at least an easier process to bring on a new sport when it's wanted. So it's more of one of those things. Like when it's wanted, it can be transitioned relatively quickly compared to maybe the past.
That's interesting. Yeah. Do you think so? There are a bunch of people who were talking about trying to bring football up because the World Cup's coming up, and they're like, oh, they keep talking about when the World Cup comes, and I feel like people are starting to expect World Cup stuff now, even though it's March 17th. We still don't even know all of the teams that are playing in the World Cup. And I think I saw, what was it? I think Panini hinted at their World Cup sticker book or something like that. And the few tweets I saw about it were people getting excited about it, but it feels like people are expecting Sport.Fun to be talking about the World Cup now, and nobody else is. Like the very established platforms are not, they're just not talking about it yet.
Yeah.
And yet there's this expectation that Sport.Fun, every day that goes by, that they don't have a huge marketing plan for the World Cup. And I think people just need to settle down. Like nobody's talking about the World Cup right now.
Yeah, I mean, at least over here, I don't know if Europe's different, but there's nothing talked about.
And it's happening here.
Yeah, it's happening here. There's nothing. The only thing you hear is the ticket prices are outrageous. That's the only thing I hear, and I hear that occasionally. But other than that, I don't hear very much about it.
Yeah, I think people just need to kind of appreciate that it's not like Sport.Fun's missing the boat here. The boat's still at the dock. Is that the phrase I'll use? I just wanted to touch on that because I don't know. It feels like the negative response to NFL is there's nothing going on, so you guys should be doing a ton for soccer. And it's there's not even a ton for soccer right now either.
No, I mean, there's Champs League. I don't even know when the Champs League final is. I mean, I have an idea, obviously, of when it is just because of timelines, but I don't realistically know when the Champs League final is. Because we're still in the first round of knockouts.
Right.
Second round knockouts, I guess. It's just not close. People aren't really talking about it. I think things in the real world just work a lot slower than platforms like this. They go, you don't hear about stuff in that far in advance a lot of the time.
Yeah, and it just goes back to your point about crypto speed, basically. That at the beginning they shipped a ton of stuff, and I think everybody kind of expected that to be the pace of things getting shipped. And at some point, clearly they were this isn't going to be good enough. The direction we're going in is not good enough for a mass audience. And if the goal is a mass audience, you need to pivoting whatever the new site design that they keep talking about, whatever that is, needs to happen earlier rather than later. You don't want to keep shipping things on your old site and then have to redo them for the new one. And so that's the stuff that takes time. And yet people got used to getting stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just a perception thing, I think.
I think that was something was so rare too, is like early on, because the issue is like a lot of the stuff you do early is stuff that can be done pretty quickly. Or like you had already been working on this stuff, so it comes out relatively quickly. Whereas when you're trying to design completely new things, it doesn't just come out as rapidly in terms of it, because you're working on it. Like, let's say you come up with the idea of, we want to do this product or this thing. Well, it's going to be a lot of the times from scratch, that you then have to come up with the idea behind it, the concept. You have to then come up with the design work for it. Then you have to come up with the dev work for it. Then you have to test it. Then you go back. Like, stuff just doesn't get turned over that quickly in a lot of different areas, especially because you have a lot of different groupings of people that are working on different things. So it takes time to sort of funnel through all those things. Whereas like in the early days of any platform or any product, stuff's really been being worked on behind the scenes before it was even launched. So then once it launched, like these things are already like in the hopper, they're getting done. Like I remember when we did the lineup builder for Sower Data, I think it took 2 or 3 months to fully design, develop, and do all that stuff, test it, and then get it out. If like it could have even been longer than that, because it was something that hadn't been in the plans originally, and was something that we then decided to add from scratch. And then it took a lot of brainstorming, a lot of concept design, a lot of design work for the actual concept, and then the dev work behind it. And then we had to test all of it. It just takes a lot of time. So I think, yeah, that's definitely something that is, people want stuff very rapidly, because a lot of the times they get stuff very rapidly, especially in the early days of a platform. And then as you go, the stuff that comes after that is more complex and takes a little bit of time to come out.
Yeah, I think whenever people are expecting some new product, I think the only time thing they consider is the dev time. Like how long does it take them to build? Whereas design, testing, implementation, like all of that stuff takes a lot of time as well. Probably, I don't know if it takes more time than the dev time at this point, but that stuff's really important.
It depends what it is, I would say, based on what I've seen with stuff. Like I see different stuff take different times depending on what it is. Sure. Because sometimes the concept is pretty quick and you're easy to come up with a design concept pretty quick, and then it takes a little bit longer to dev and test. Whereas I've seen other things where it comes out and it's like, you got to work through a lot of kinks with the actual development of whatever the product is and coming through all the ideas before you even get to the design work and then the dev work. So it really just sort of depends what it is. Like I'll give an example, like dark mode. Dark mode's pretty simple from a like concept idea, right? It's just like dark mode. Because like a lot of sites have dark mode, so it's just like dark mode. That's the concept.
Just do it.
And then the design work of dark mode is pretty simple. You just come up with color schemes that work, and you're just basically replicating what you already have, just in different colorations. Well, apparently the dev work, which I'm not a dev, so I can't comment, but dev work takes a bit of time, and it's not just a like make screen black. It's like there's a lot that goes into it. So it's stuff like that where like I see stuff where you would think like, oh, that might not be a big haul, but it is a bigger task than it might be to like an immediate thing. And then you see other things where the task is a lot more complex, but like as someone on the outside looking in, you might be like, oh, that would take like 2 seconds and have the idea, but it doesn't. It takes quite a while.
Yeah, I think the big thing with dark mode is that people don't appreciate you basically have to change every single page on the site.
Yeah.
It's not just just like you said, make everything dark.
Correct. Yeah, you have to, because like as a user, right? Like I'm thinking about it, like I'll use Underdog as an example because I have it up. There is literally a button where you just click and it just changes it to dark mode or light mode. So like as a user, you're just like, oh yeah, just click the button, it's done. So like you think that's just all it takes as the actual implementation of the product, and it's just not the case.
Yeah. Let's change gears here. What is your sport breakdown for your last 10 transactions?
I would say, well, probably mostly soccer right now because I kind of set my NFL up to where I wanted it for the off season. But that goes back into the point is like I planned months ago, like what I was planning to do for the off season. So I really haven't had to do tons from the NFL perspective because I did it where I wanted to begin with. So I'm sort of am okay with that. So most of my stuff is on soccer right now.
Are you moving any like soccer money to NFL?
That's my plans. I am not doing that as of yet, but I think I will likely be doing that in the coming months. Because I'm also aware and like saw the market trend. Like the market trend was not great for a while, and I wasn't going to be buying a bunch of NFL when it looked like it was going to go downwards from there. Now that said, I would say like the last 2 weeks it has been stable to up a little bit to where I feel pretty good that NFL is like where it is for right now, and then feel like it's going to likely go up at some point. So it's more so I will probably start transitioning that in the upcoming couple weeks of going towards that.
Sean, we're absolutely flying.
Well, I mean, even I think in the last like week we're up from I think the low it was like 2.46 was the market. Yeah, so like I think that's pretty much where like the low point was, and it was there for a bit. It might have moved a little bit, but for the most part it's been there. So I feel pretty good that like this is kind of where the NFL, that was Spicer selling off someone.
This one was?
Yeah, that one was. I think it was Puka. I think he sold off
2.58 to 2.56. I'm not going
to. Yeah, it's not that drastic. So anyways, yeah, I think I'm going to be starting to move stuff there. I also have a little bit of gold saved that I was planning to deploy just at different time frames. So it's just a matter of who I want to deploy on. And honestly, I've been kind of busy because I've been working on the draft stuff. I've been working on scouting stuff that I haven't been spending much time concerned with the market and like my buys. I've been more focused on the product side of things and making sure that we have stuff that everyone will be happy about in the coming months.
So yeah, the reason I ask, and not financial advice and all this stuff, the lack of getting NFL rewards on the off season means the only way I can add to my NFL portfolio before the season starts is either bring new money in or take it from football.
Correct.
Generally, like if I pack something football that someone I don't want, instead of swapping to football shares I want, I've been selling them and moving to NFL.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I go in the market and it just feels like anyone could be a buy.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help me at all because I'm just like, there will be wrong ones, sure. But me buying Garrett Wilson shares and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, great. I went from 0 to 20,000 in no time, which is about $3 at this point. But I'm wondering what your thought is in the strategy of taking from soccer into NFL, even though the next big event is the World Cup and not the start of the NFL season.
Yeah, I'm still okay with it because I think currently I've honestly contemplated selling a big chunk of my soccer in general and moving it to NFL. Like it's something that's pretty consistently on my mind. It's just a matter of actually pulling the trigger and doing it. But also at the same time, like I've positioned myself decently well in NFL as it is to where I'm okay with where I'm at currently in NFL. But yeah, to your point on the players, there are 3 players I wouldn't touch. Do you want to guess who they are? Like I think outside of those 3 players, I think it's pretty reasonable to buy anyone.
I think Alvin Kamara's got to be one of them.
Alvin Kamara's one.
Let me look.
He's one. I have no interest in buying Kamara at all. That said, though, if you want to buy him, it's so cheap.
Is Kelsey still on the list?
Is still on the list, but less so because you're getting another year out of him, and he is at least a pretty serviceable tight end in theory, even at this age. So he is another one.
I think Mahomes is the other.
No, but there is definite reasons why that would be the case.
Yeah.
But the other one is Pacheco. I have no interest in Pacheco.
Oh, okay.
He moved to Detroit. He's very clearly, I think he sucks. I just don't think he's very good. Those are the 3 players that I just have no interest in. Outside of those 3, I think you could literally make a case for everybody involved.
I'm looking at like my notes from the last couple of weeks or like the moves from a couple of weeks. And I think that's probably fine. I think Rico Dowdle is probably a no for me as well.
Yeah. So the issue with Dowdle and it was annoying to me. He basically went to the same situation he was in. Where like he's like,
I'm not even sure. I think he went to a worse one, but
maybe. Where'd he go again? I forget off the top of my head.
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, yeah, because you have Jalen Warren there, but they don't have Kenneth Gainwell. But you basically, I'm going to say the same because I think that Jalen Warren's not great either. So like to me, it's kind of just you moved into a spot where you're in a two-headed running back field with another guy.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I don't know. It's just not that exciting to me. But I was excited for the idea of what he was going to do. Like if he would have went to the Chiefs instead of Kenneth Walker, that would have been appealing. I think Kenneth Walker's move was quite appealing because he was in a spot where he had just never gotten the reins and the ability to be the workhorse until the playoffs this year. And in Kansas City, there's a pretty good chance that he gets a pretty hefty amount of the workload. So I think that was a pretty good upgrade for him. I think there were some other guys that moved around as well. Like, I'll tell you what, Jahmyr Gibbs didn't move, but they moved Montgomery out and they moved Pacheco, who sucks, in. Like, what a god spot for him. Same with Bijan Robinson. Like, they lost Tyler Algier. Like, there's just a lot of different stuff that
is Pacheco I feel like the difference between Pacheco and Montgomery doesn't do anything.
Well, the difference is I think that they will very clearly make Pacheco the second running back, whereas like Montgomery was like the 1A or 1B. Pacheco is very clearly behind Gibbs.
Yeah. What do you think about Bijan being number one now?
I agree with it, actually. I thought going into the offseason, I thought Bijan was clear RB1 before the Montgomery moves. I think that after the Montgomery moves, I think Gibbs is probably my RB1, but it's probably the two of them are RB1 and RB2 for me. And then after that, I think that there's a decent gap to other people.
Yeah, I noticed Bijan's now over 0.0125, the magic number. It's just like steady buys.
Steady buys. People are buying. And it doesn't take tons to go up. Like you're just seeing like here's someone buying $60, $90, $50, $100. Like, so I think it's stuff like that. But yeah, I like Bijan. I think Bijan and Gibbs to me are like the two marquee running backs. Because once you go down to McCaffrey. I mean, he's pretty old. And honestly, I don't know if they can continue to give him that same amount of work. Jonathan Taylor, I have some concerns about them in that offense in general. So there's a very clear like top two running backs for me. And I think the top two price guys are the top two. Then after that, like Genti was the guy I talked up buying a lot because I just thought he's young. He's a guy that's going to continue to get work and he's just in a good spot. Like I think Omarion Hampton, the spot got better for him. Kenneth Walker probably upgraded his situation. So I think there's definitely some people here that upgrade their situations. Now, that said, we have not done this yet, but I've mentioned on this show before, the injury cover is going to have to evolve. Yeah. Because it is not going to work when we have multiple players on the same teams. And for an example is I think what will likely happen is injury cover will still exist, but if there is a player on the team that is now the backup, your injury cover will not be that player. It would likely be the player behind that player. Yeah. So, for example, if Jahmyr Gibbs gets hurt, all of a sudden your injury cover is not going to be Isaiah Pacheco. It's going to be whoever the back is that is replacing Jahmyr Gibbs. So, like maybe that's going to be an idea where like that is something that hinders Jahmyr Gibbs and that hurts him. So that's something to keep in mind as well. That will not get announced for a little while, but I already know in my head, like, which we just talked about, it does not work if there are multiple players on the same team. And going forward, there are going to be players on the same team in this platform. So it's going to evolve. I have an idea of how it's going to evolve. I think that idea will be logical and everyone will be like, yeah, that makes the most sense. But that still doesn't take away the fact that like if there's two players on a team, like your injury cover situation might be worse than it would have been otherwise.
Yeah, you're almost kind of forced to own Pacheco if you own Gibbs.
Yeah. Well,
I actually don't think that's bad though.
No, I don't think that's bad either. And I don't think it's bad that if you have a guy on a team and there is an injury cover, I don't think that's bad either. I think it just adds another layer to things, right?
When are we updating teams?
We were looking into that. It's getting worked on, I know, behind the scenes right now. It's not a like it's being worked on. It's already been discussed in the last week or two, so it's being worked on. It's just we got to sort out that, and then once we do, it's just not something that's like an immediate need, right? Like we don't need to move Kenneth Walker from Seattle to KC right now. And some of the people that signed, like they weren't official when they signed either. And then like you don't have numbers as on some of the guys. So it will be done. It is already being discussed and worked on internally. And then once it is done, you'll know.
I forgot about the number thing.
Yeah, like I don't even know if he has it. Let's see if he has a number with.
Yeah, like I wouldn't even know. Like
I
Travis
don't even know if it's official. Like I don't even know if he's like signed because like you saw the stuff. Yeah, like he doesn't even have a number right now. Like if you go to like ESPN, he just doesn't have a number. Now that said, he probably will be the same number if there is that available. It looks like he is retaining the number 9. But so anyways, like that is being worked on.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like the so rare thing with oops, sorry.
Well, except for in so rare, like it mattered and you had to know like when a player changed over above 23, whereas like this is something that it needs to be changed by the start of the year, but it doesn't need to be done today.
I meant the previous so rare thing, like if they changed teams and then they didn't have a picture and then they wouldn't do the card and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those weird random things that users don't think about at all. They just want their new thing.
Yeah, exactly. No, so that is something that is being worked on internally. When it will be done, I don't know the exact timeline.
So you haven't made any moves based on actual NFL signings and trades?
No, but I have ones that I have in mind that I plan on doing. But also like a lot of these guys were like Bijan. I thought going into the offseason, Bijan was RB1 anyways. And so I had already stocked up on Bijan because of that thought. So like the reason I haven't made moves from that perspective is like the guys that I kind of already envisioned this type of stuff happening. So I already have lots of shares of these players for myself personally.
Do you have any recollection of what you paid for them?
I can look. Kenneth Walker.
Saying, like, do you care?
Well, no, not really. Like that's just not. You and I have talked about it before. Like I don't sit there and just stare at the market every day. I know where I want to be from a shares perspective. So like, I don't just like remember all that stuff. But I'm sure I paid more than what they are now on a lot of the players. So it's not like, but most of my Gibbs buys were like early because I like Gibbs a lot. And then Bijan is pretty similar. And like a lot of my Bijan stuff is moving over from other players. Like I moved over Bo Nix into Bijan, for example. Like that was some of my moves. But I have a list of what I want to do for this season. But again, a lot of my list and a lot of my plans were stuff I already put into place 2-3 months ago.
Yeah. And really nothing's changed those plans.
Correct. So it's more so like, am I just going to accumulate and add more of them? And the idea for me is like, I kind of bought what I wanted to have of everyone to begin with. And then it's just a matter of like where I want to go from there.
Yeah. I keep looking at mine and I'm just like, do I want to just plow into NFL? Which is weird because like I stopped following the NFL for years.
Yeah.
Like I used to be a Jets season ticket holder, which probably explains why I would have just given up on the NFL for a while. Yes. But like NFL is the first fantasy sport I ever played. I worked in fantasy NFL for years and just like fell out of it. And Sport.Fun brought me back into it. And I was like, I'm not going to play that much. And then once you start playing, I was just like, oh, I want back in. Yeah. And so now I'm literally following off-season news in March and would not have done that without SDF.
Yeah.
Which is wild to me.
Yeah.
Mostly because I'm curious what happens if they add other sports and whether I start. Like I have a feigning interest in Formula One because I like Drive to Survive. And I know the season just started. And I was like, if Formula One was on Sport.Fun, would I just go into it? And like the answer is an obvious yes for me. League of Legends, probably not, but I mean, just takes a global pandemic and I'd get into it, I guess.
That is very true. It's happened once, right?
You got anything else you want to discuss today?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered a good amount of topics.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'm going to keep following the NFL offseason stuff. I made a few moves. So I think that the trickiest thing about wanting to make moves is deciding whether I want to give up on the offseason TP of certain guys.
That's
I don't have a lot of Rico Dowdle, but I have some, and I was like, it's not enough for me to keep holding on to that. But if there, something happens and it's like, oh, I'll just swap this guy, and it's like, I've got 18 more weeks of off-season TP from this guy. Do I really want to get rid of him?
Yeah, I mean, like, looking at that is definitely part of the equation for me too. Like, I don't have tons of Stefan Diggs, but like, I'm getting a good chunk of off-season TP from Diggs. Do I want to sacrifice that to move him into players that I'm more interested in? And the answer very well might be yes. I just haven't sat down to really decide, like, am I okay with that decision? Do I want to go with that decision?
Yeah, I think as long as I don't have a single button that shows me exactly how much I'll make from a certain guy all off season, I'm just going to pretend like each guy will give me 1 million TP.
Well, you do know, like, I mean, I'm looking at my Diggs right now and I'm getting like 600 TP a week. And I know that's over another like 20 weeks. So I know that there's a good chunk of TP I'm getting from Diggs. Does it really benefit me to move into someone else? And the answer is maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
That'll be the trickiest part of the whole off. Like, it'll have to be something catastrophic, I think, for me to sell a guy who I'm getting off-season TP from. Even though, yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. If you could please like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. I'm going to record a third half podcast with Palmer tomorrow, Wednesday. Yep. And so more SDF content coming your way. If you're looking for anything else, or if you've watched this whole video and you're just like, oh, this is a platform I'd like to join, there is a link in the description to do that. So yeah, Sean, good to talk to you. Everyone else, thanks for coming, and don't forget to go outside.